Welcome, everyone. My name is Johanna Jones, President and CEO of IT Senior Management Forum. And I want to thank you for joining this robust conversation on risk and response, how companies are protecting our future. In an era marked by constant change, uncertainty, disruption from a cyber, technology, environmental, workforce development, and governance perspective, we've assembled a powerhouse of panelists that are all experts on each one of these subject matters. So, first question, as we look at threats and emerging trends over the next 3 to 5 years, please give us your insights on how organizations can build systems and cultures that proactively stay ahead of these threats.
A key disruption coming down the pipeline are these demographic shifts that we're facing. Things like the declining birth rate, the generation gap, shrinking workforce. We have an aging society and we have a changing family structure. For a long time, our society has been oriented around that kind of household structure, the nuclear family, married with kids, and that's changing. But what's not changing yet is school systems, right? Workplace policies, even things like local governments and taxation. They're not changing as quickly. So at the same time that society is aging, we have a changing workforce, different needs, different jobs of the future. So I think that, as we look ahead, we have to ask ourselves strategic questions like, are we facing greater number of generational conflicts in the workplace? Another thing that I've been thinking about is, the flow of new workers as our
Absolutely.
birth rate drops and the workforce needs are changing. And also we have an aging society to care for. How does that change the talent needs of the future? We need to start thinking about it now. So at the Future Business Team, for example, we do what we call rehearsing the future. And that's where we play out these kind of scenarios and ask ourselves and ask our customers, our audiences, what would you do? How do you respond? So by rehearsing, we believe that we can anticipate disruption and therefore stay ahead of it.
To leverage off of a bit what Alex has said, and it's fascinating, right? Like, what is the future of work? And the future meaning like now and going into the immediate next 3 to 5 years, as you say. So I take it from the perspective of a governance, as you say, Johanna, and I'm looking at it from a board perspective most acutely for our purposes. So as Alex was saying, this is a really dynamic period, and the dynamism is accelerating. It's not slowing down, it's not stabilizing. And so how can leadership at the board, at the management level, really respond to those changes? And Alex, as you were saying, like doing the sort of tabletop exercises like pressure testing. What if this scenario, what if that scenario? And that really is a hallmark, I think, of a really effective board giving governance and oversight and guidance to management, which is staying light on their feet, staying up to speed, the legal, regulatory, reputational, operational, environmental, economic, all of these dynamic environments are coming together, and boards need to make sure that they are educated, up to speed for that company. What is their footprint? What is their geographic coverage? Legal, regulatory, reputational pressures, and not just today, but to forecast it so that they can be abreast of those developments and not be reactive, but be proactive to the extent they can be. And that requires a lot of talent on the board, some of which is technical, and I know we'll talk about that, but also governance where they're making sure that they're getting the right reports coming up from management so that they can do their best and most valuable inputs in giving guidance to management. And so dynamism, this risks that we look at from a risk perspective, but risk also presents opportunities. And how can you be most effective in taking advantage of those opportunities?
Absolutely. Great points, Tara. So be flexible, be nimble, be
Mhm.
proactive, and think about your board composition.
That's
Great,
right.
great,
Absolutely.
great feedback. Great feedback. Thank you. So, Mary, please share the cyber perspective.
Well, I live and breathe this stuff as it relates to workforce development with the 500,000 plus jobs out there that still remain unfilled in cybersecurity, and looking at from it from a human capital management perspective in cybersecurity. We haven't really done a good job in training younger talent or transitioning professionals to be in this space. We
So,
kind of broke our pipeline as we started outsourcing and taking these entry level roles offshore. Now we have a issue where individual folks that are trying to get into this space, they're sitting there and they're getting the degrees, they're getting the certifications, but organizations are now asking them for experience. And with that comes a problem and a challenge because they can't get experience if you don't hire them. Right. And so it's the egg, the chicken and the egg argument here, which is organizations don't do cybersecurity workforce development well. We have not done it. We haven't made the proper investment into our talent. And now what's going to happen in the next 3 to 5 years is you're going to continue to see this particular gap at the higher levels because, I've spent 30 plus years in this space, and I understand the process by which someone gets educated, indoctrinated in cybersecurity. So the biggest risk to organizations, if they're not talking about cybersecurity workforce development, they're going to be missing out because you got to do something to train individuals to be ready to take over that baton, so to speak, as we continue to move forward, as our problems only get bigger globally, and we want to compete globally. And right now, we're not doing a very good job at it at all.
There's so many different pieces here that Tara and Alex and Mary have already hit on. I think the one issue that I want to bring right to the surface here is information, and that is the data which we rely on, the information that we rely on to make decisions, and this sort of massive change in the information environment over the last few years and where it's headed with AI, also where it's headed with government, where it's headed with individuals, and this sort of weaponization of information, loss of transparency around economic statistics, all kinds of different data sets that are kind of disappearing off the internet, and a loss of sort of trust in information. All of those things make it really difficult to make good business decisions, and that is increasingly where we're headed in terms of uncertainty, and not having that stable understanding of, here's a body of information that we can all agree upon as a set of facts, as a set of good information. When that comes to health information, when that comes to economic information, when that comes to labor information, that becomes really, really crucial in how we build vaccines, in how we build our economic decisions, how we decide what we're going to sell and what we're not going to sell in a company. And so the big thing for me from an intelligence perspective is that companies really do need to understand, kind of take a look at how they understand the information environment, how they're making decisions, and where they're getting that information from. Some companies will build internal intelligence functions, others will rely on external sources of information. On the cyber side, increasingly, we also have these internal threat intelligence organizations, but those used to be a kind of a nice to have. Those are now
right,
becoming
Mhm.
a crucial must
right,
have
right.
because the information environment has become so fraught. And so that's the risk that I'll focus mostly on
Yep.
today.
Absolutely, absolutely. So a new skill set or competency that we should also be looking at in terms of our board, in
Absolutely.
terms of that intelligence
Absolutely.
Right.
infrastructure. So
Mhm.
thank you, Meredith. And I agree. Before it was a nice to have, and now it's absolutely necessary. So let's talk a little bit about resilience and how technology can help support building resilience in this current environment. So, Alex, will you share some insights on how AI, predictive analytics, and real time data infrastructure can help organizations build resilience?
Yeah, well, there's a really interesting technology that does not get the attention that AI tends to get, but it is really big. It's called digital twins, and it can and does utilize AI, but it's essentially a real-time simulation. So it's like that modeling concept, that being able to test things, to rehearse the future and see what would happen. So we use a lot of those at TCS. One example is the digital twin of the heart. Right now, that's being used to help marathon runners train. We have that TCS marathon. So some of the top runners their heart is literally being modeled, and the information that they get from it is being used to help them train better, to become better athletes and runners. And so that's sort of, in the longer term future, that's the here and now. In the longer term future, could be stretched out to improve all of our health, right? If it's something that everyone could have a digital twin of their heart, you could predict cardiac health issues right before they happen and prevent them essentially. The other example is a thing that we call TwinX, and this is for the business world, where supporting our customers in decision making based on a digital twin of their organization. So you can make a twin of a person or their organ or an organization. You may have heard of these digital twins of celebrities that are, or historical figures that you can chat with. You can even digitally twin yourself. So this idea that digital twin can enhance resilience really speaks to being able to sustain, not just our wellness or well-being, but like maybe a memory or history, and quite possibly sustain our environment, because there are applications for sustainability, twinning the earth or a neighborhood, or unpredictable weather patterns. So I think digital twins are one of those ways that we can reach more resilient levels.
Extraordinary. So, we have a lot of learning to do, right? We have opportunities to learn how to deploy digital twins and predictive analytics. So I think we also need a futurist on our team in our organizations of the future. So thank you. How insightful, Alex. So, Meredith, can you talk about from an intelligence and environmental perspective, how emerging technology can help build resilience in organizations for the future?
Yeah, and I'm going to take it in a slightly different direction, and that is that there's been just an enormous amount of focus on what kind of technology can we use, what kind of AI can we use, and to Alex's point with the digital twins, right? That is a perfect sort of modeling idea for thinking out risks and figuring out what direction might this go. However, I think one of the key things that we're missing here is the human component of this. So are we actually training our people to look at these technologies, understand the reward, but also understand the risk and build that risk assessment for every technology we want to bring in the door? And is the risk really worth the reward here? Because so much of this is experimental right now. We have to be on the forefront. We have to innovate. We have to do all the things, but at the same time, it takes one or two bad decisions on an AI product that you're bringing into the organization, and it can blow the whole thing up in just a very short period of time. And so I think when we think about risk and resilience, we have to come back to our people no matter what, and we have to come back to making sure they're adequately trained and they are making the right decisions, and they're not just feeling pressure to AI everything and not understanding how to apply that
Absolutely.
in a smart way.
That's a critical point, that in terms of building resilience for our organization, we have to build in incentives, opportunities, rewards to develop and train our teams appropriately, as well as explore and model the consequences of deploying or not deploying technology, and not just pressuring um, our teams to quickly learn and deploy. So absolutely, that it's critical now more than ever that we support our teams and our staff. Excellent point. So let's talk a little bit about regulations and compliance. The standards vary region by region, they vary industry by industry. But Tara, how can companies anticipate and adapt to a changing landscape in terms of regulation and compliance?
So, yeah, absolutely. And I also wanted to quickly echo a couple of points that Meredith noted, which is goes into the ability to be effectively an effective board and oversight, which is the quality of information that you're getting, both at the management, but also at the board level. And given the disinformation, misinformation, the risk that we're now undermining kind of objective economic data, it puts more pressure on the board and management to validate and to make sure that the information they're getting is really accurate to help them be the best that they can be. Legal, regulatory, reputational risk. The legal environment and the regulatory environment has accelerated in terms of the pace of change, interpretation of regulations, interpretation of the laws. And so it is imperative that at the board level, there are systems set up to have a refreshment in terms, constant understanding of how the legal and regulatory framework in which that company is operating has shifted the interpretation, the application to the business, as well as planning for the next 3 to 5 years in terms of new markets they may be entering over that period of time. That has always been the case. It's just that it is so dynamic now, and the candidly the uncertainty that's there, right, creates more pressure on management and at the board to make sure that they've got a robust monitoring system, that they've got systems in place with external experts as well as internal experts to keep them abreast of those changes and to make sure that the board is educated on how all of those legal and regulatory changes may affect them from a technology standpoint, from a risk standpoint, and from to make sure that that company is able to take advantage of the disruption that's there in the market, whether it's technical, operational, what have you, in a way that isn't exposing them to legal and regulatory risks that they aren't willing to accept.
That's a great point, Tara, is taking a look at our insurance policies and making sure that we have the proper coverage to support any risk as well as working to mitigate risk. Our risk and response takeaways. Let's quickly go around and share one action item from your perspective that you want to encourage business leaders to take on right now to strengthen their organizations? Let's start with Meredith.
Ooh, still thinking of mine. I think in keeping with the in the same vein as as I was saying before, it really matters to take the time to figure out how you're taking in that information and how you're getting that forward looking information into all of your businesses. It really, right now a lot of these functions sit in the security group within a company. Occasionally they might sit like in a legal group, but where they really belong is across the whole organization, so that you are actually pulling the information from every single silo and bringing that all together at the C-suite level, at the board level, so that when those decisions are being made, people are looking at the same sheet of music.
I would say again, workforce development, cybersecurity workforce development. We have to we have a gap and a growing gap, and we're losing ground globally because we have all these open roles. We don't necessarily have the individuals that have been trained to do so. With the advent of all these wonderful technologies, we're having this brain drain that's happening even in the K through 12 space with the usage of all of this AI technology to write their papers for them and those the critical thinking aspects of things. So we have to now take the time to invest in talent that's coming into our workforce.
But I'm going to say to grow stronger as an organization, focus on unlearning. Unlearning is this idea that was put forth in the book Future Shock, which was a really early futurist book back in the
Yes.
1960s. And it's all about letting go of our deeply held beliefs, our patterns of behaviors, our rigid, locked in ways of doing things, and unlearn a few things. And only when we kind of let go of those, ingrained patterns and behaviors can we embrace uncertainty.
Well, so to leverage off what all of my fellow panelists have said, and I echo all of their remarks and observations, I think I pick up on one thing, which is adaptability. That as organizations, both at the board and the management level, you need to stay attuned to developments. And as you said, Alex, unlearn things. Don't think the same way. Challenge assumptions, right? And really make sure that you are an adaptable organization and a board that is constantly pressure testing assumptions, looking at opportunities, not necessarily relying on technology. AI, yes, it's a wonderful thing, but I'm 1,000% behind you, Meredith. We also don't know enough about it. And the one other thing I would say, Mary, and what you were talking about is soft skills, what we used to call soft skills, right? Which is the ability to synthesize huge amounts of data and communicate complex interdisciplinary challenges and opportunities in a way that is going to help decision making that is effective and successful.
Thank you. And thank you all so much for joining Risk and Response: How Companies Are Protecting Our Future. This has been a very dynamic and robust conversations. And I hope that all of you have your notes. I certainly have mine, and a to-do list of all of the upskilling that not only I need to do as a CEO, but opportunities to develop my staff and my board. So thank you so much for your immense perspective and for allowing us to share in your expertise. Thank you.
Thank you.